and welcome back to The Piece of Persistence. I'm your host, Abigail Wright, and happy holidays. It's a very exciting time for some people with caroling and concerts and lots of parties and time with your loved ones and some travel. For others, it can be a very difficult time. These seasons can be lonely for some. We are approaching the shortest day of the year, so anyone dealing with seasonal affective disorder, that's definitely a thing. It's also colder in a lot of places. Right now it's in the 20s in New York City, so I'm chilly and happy to have my puffy coat outside. But as we approach this time of the year, with all of the hecticness and all of the running around and the shorter days, I think it's a really good time to give ourselves a break. But how do we give ourselves a break and still manage to stick to these good habits that we've been forming? I have two ways, and I want to talk about those two things with you today. And I want to make an important distinction too between guilt and shame. It's one thing to feel a little bit of guilt over something, to be like, oh, I really wish that didn't happen. I feel so bad about that. Or, you know, this is not what I wanted. But shame is something completely different, and if you know anything about the works of Brené Brown, she's an incredible author. She talks a lot about the difference between guilt and shame, and the reason this is important is because if you're shaming yourself, and shaming is like, oh, I'm such a loser. This is so terrible. I'm so horrible a person. I can't believe this happened. Why did I do this again? Etc. You get the point. If you're shaming yourself instead of feeling guilty about something, in particular, that's really bad for habit formation, for the health of these habits that you've been growing and nurturing. And the reason that it's so bad is because when you get into this shame spiral, if you start to make yourself feel worse, then often what we do is we go ahead and find a coping mechanism for ourselves to make ourselves feel better. And often those coping mechanisms are your bad habits. Like you feel terrible, and so you'll go out and get yourself that pint of Ben & Jerry's and sit and watch it in front of the TV while drinking a tequila. Not that any of those things are necessarily bad, but if those are the habits that you're trying to avoid, when you fall off the wagon and you shame yourself, often it creates this spiral where you're like, oh, well, you know, I did such a bad job today. I might as well just forget the rest of the day, screw this, and I'll start over again tomorrow. And you go into these spirals of unhappiness and shame-provoking behavior that usually include your bad habits. So cut yourself a break this season. If you fall off the wagon, if you one day or 1 hour or whatever it is, you don't do that thing that you really wanted to do, don't beat yourself up over it. Give yourself compassion, because studies show that people who are compassionate are able to keep their habits better. We want to be kind to ourselves this holiday season. So another way to be kind to yourself is to use what Gretchen Rubin calls in her book Better Than Before a pre-planned exception. And what a pre-planned exception gives you is the planning, the future insight to say, hey, you know what, for Christmas, I really want to have those carbs. I know I've cut them out of my diet, but I want to have mashed potatoes, and I want to have pumpkin pie, and I want to enjoy those things that make it feel like Christmas. Or, you know what, for New Year's, I'm gonna give myself the opportunity to have as much champagne as I want that one night. Even though I don't usually do champagne or whatever it is. You say you make a habit of going to bed at 10. Obviously, you're probably gonna give yourself the exception of staying up till midnight on New Year's Eve. Stuff like that. But the problem lies in not planning in advance. When you don't plan it in advance, then you're just giving yourself license to, in the spur of the moment, go ahead and break your habits. And when you do that, then it seems to your brain that your habits really aren't that important and you don't really need to keep them anyway, and there go your good habits out the window just because of the holiday. Which, often happens. So give yourself the opportunity to keep your good habits throughout the holiday season and beyond by planning your exceptions and giving yourself that way out to really enjoy yourself during the holidays. Thanks as always for joining me on The Piece of Persistence. It was short and sweet for the holiday, and I wish you all the warmth and light that you can have as we move into this winter season. And as we move into it together, I will be back on December 30th, one day before New Year's Eve, and I look forward to seeing you then. In the meantime, have a wonderful holiday.